Hello, and welcome to session number 3 of Write a Romance with Last Chapter Press. Today, we're going to be talking about dialogue and sex scenes. So I don't want to waste any time, so let's get started. All right. I want to tell you a little bit about our story contest. I've told you about me, I've told you about our company, I've told you about all of our great things that happen with our company. So I'm going to tell you about our story contest. So what we're looking for is a 25 to 50,000 word romance, contemporary. It can be steamy or sweet romance, male and female pairing, or LGBTQIA romance stories are welcomed, but no more than 2 people in the relationship. So just 2 partners, no menage. No previously published stories. We check and we will find it. So I will say, don't even try. We have had people try in the past. So we just want something that's new and fresh. And with toes in the sand, if you go for a beachy vibe, that would be even better. No AI generated stories. We don't, by generated, we mean concepted, outlined, created. We don't want, we want humanity inside of our fiction. We want the emotional power that we give to the stories. So we're going to ask you join us and be part of a rich and diverse artistic publishing house where all voices matter. There is no fee to enter, and there will be feedback. So what can you get? First place for the contest would get, we will publish your story, and we happen to think that that's actually the top and most important award that you get. We will treat your story like royalty. $300 cash prize, which is awarded via PayPal, so keep that in mind. $300 gift certificate to Successful Writer Marketplace. You can use that for like book marketing, coaching, ads, graphics, whatever your heart desires and your authorship needs. You can check that out at marketplace.successfulwriter.net for examples. And then you also get a collection of Last Chapter Press merch to show off to all of your friends and families. And that includes stuff like, these are lovely mugs that we have. And then we have other things too, like pens and a lot of fun stuff. And then along with the first place, we will have up to 5 other authors will win your story published by Last Chapter Press and collection of Last Chapter Press merch to show off to your friends and family. So you can find that at Last Chapter Press/contests, or just go to our website and take a look at it. All right. Again, there's no fee to enter. There will be feedback. So I will be reading the stories. I will be telling you what I think. I will be giving you valid feedback. So I would love to have you enter. All right, let's go on ahead and go to the next slide. I know you want to know what you want to learn, what you're going to learn today. So we're going to talk about dialogue. Lots of why use dialogue, where should you use dialogue, how should you use dialogue, and a lot more. And then we're going to touch on sex scenes. And I want to say it's more than X goes into Z. It's not, or I guess I could say P goes into V, or any of the versions. It's more about the emotional side of it. And I'm going to talk about that as well. You'll be able to find this session on our YouTube channel, which is the extension at Last Chapter Press 6487. So, what and why of dialogue? So what is dialogue? It's an exchange of spoken words between 2 or more characters in a book, a play, or other written work. Plainly, it's people talking to each other. So why do we use dialogue? Well, there are many different reasons, and I've put a few down here. We use it to reveal character traits. Who is this person, and what do they think, and how do they think? We also use it to move a plot forward. What can be learned or discovered through dialogue? We build tension. Remember to rock the boat. It's lots of tension. Speedboat, then slow down, pontoon, lots of tension. It's that hills and then valleys. So remember that. And you can use that with dialogue as well. A heated argument, you're reaching the top. They come to an agreement, you're back down at the bottom. That helps a reader to be invested in the story. It also helps to create an emotional connection, kindness and feelings, not necessarily a I love you moment when they actually speak it out loud, but it can be. The next thing, to paint a picture or the setting. I talk about setting a lot because I think setting is one of the most important things in writing a book. I want to know where I'm at. I want to know where it looks like, what is happening. It's just, it's putting the reader into the world. Like a country girl in the city talking to the doorman of her new apartment. She might say, I've never smelled so many different cuisines in 2 blocks. The doorman might say, you should try them all. And then she might say, I think I will. You know, she sees how that sets the mood. She sees how she sees, no, I'm sorry, we see how that sets the scene through the dialogue. We know she lives in a very busy area with lots of restaurants, that she hasn't experienced this before. So it's something new and different for her. And it also gives some characterization that she's thinking of being adventurous. And I think that readers really like that. They like when people come out of their shell and do something that they've never done before. The other thing is vary the story. Dialogue is great at breaking up long passages of prose, which is description or when you're telling the reader something. Dialogue can also be a great show, as we normally don't say, we don't tell dialogue. It's a very good show because it doesn't, unless you lead the reader. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. So, like this example that I came up with today, Mrs. Smith says, I'm going to walk out this door and say goodbye, and then I'll think about what's just happened. Yeah, that's not how we would write it, right? Because that's just like, it's boring and it's like telling me what's going to happen. I want to experience it through Mrs. Smith's eyes. Mrs. Smith says, it was so nice to see you, Jack, but I need to get to my hair appointment at Sally's salon and make a few changes to the outside too. The divorce was final. The sunshine never looked so clear and bright. So we know she's stepping outside. We've given the character action and we're progressing the plot. She has something to do. We're reminding the reader of what's happened. She's gone through a divorce. We're giving characterization that she's happy. She's saying it was nice to see you, and that she's going to be making some changes. And we tell the reader why the changes are happening. She's divorced. She's moving on. Everything seems to be going her way for now. But of course, we may be at the top of that hill and we're going to bring her down soon. So there are 2 different types of dialogue that I want to touch on, and that one is spoken words. So this is something that comes out of their mouths. This is them talking to each other or kind of talking to a group of people. Internal dialogue is thoughts, ideas, emotions that they think inside of their own head. Sometimes you can think of it as a silent monologue. And in romance, we often italicize it so that we set it apart as something that they're saying to themselves. All right, we're going to go to some hints and tips. So I'm going to take a drink. The first one is use dialogue to characterize your hero and heroine. So are they stubborn? So is he grumpy all the time? You know, grumpy is a really good trope right now. Are they loving? So they talk about cats and dogs and they volunteer. Are they carefree? In the dialogue, you could just have them like floating off into their own little world, you know, like almost a flower child kind of, yeah, I don't care, whatever. And then when they talk, do they cut people off? So they're annoying? Do they talk softly because they're timid? What character, and then next in the tips and hints, what characters don't discuss is equally important. So when I'm talking about not discussing something, having a conversation, it's secrets, it's plans, it's fears. Remember that these can be internal thoughts until they have to come out. So it could be something like, if he only knew that the baby is his, if she only knew that her father has to sell the farm. It's giving the reader the insider information, and it makes them feel like they know something special. I also want to say, let's try to make our dialogue natural. And I think this is funny. I know Ferris Bueller is a movie from the 80s, and I know a lot of people have seen it. But when he says Bueller, Bueller, it makes me crack up every time. But this is something that I see a lot, is unnatural dialogue. I want to say we can skip the hello, hello, the back and forth there, unless they're being introduced to each other. If they know each other, we jump right into the action. Dig fast and hard. You're the Indiana Jones of writing, and you have to uncover the treasure in the dialogue. Show don't tell is the last one. And this one is you can show anger, sadness, curiosity, all of those kind of characterizations through dialogue. The majority of dialogue will be show, but please be careful of doing the leading dialogue, which I said before. So this is where one character will say to their, let's say, sister, you know how dad had a gambling problem? Well, of course the sister knows. I mean, if she doesn't, this may be a huge moment for her. But if it's not, you're leading the reader. So the reader doesn't know this, but you're basically feeding it to them. You can show the readers, have the character looking at another credit card statement after their father's death, and it's maxed out, and the dialogue might be, how many more credit cards did you use at the casino, Dad? So we know you're showing us through the dialogue that their father had a gambling issue. The last one on here is very sentence length, and I would say so length does matter, which should be a slight joke. Sometimes we equate short with anger or directness, but not always. So like, what do you mean? That's short. I mean, it's pointed. You can really say what do you mean in many ways though. Like, what do you mean? Like curiosity or anger. What do you mean? You see how the emphasis really matters? So that's why we put dialogue tags with it. But mix up the length of dialogue so it's not monotonous. All right, we're moving on. So the next tip is subtext, subtlety, and secrets, the 3 S's. Subtext, this is what isn't being said, but the reader can infer. Subtlety is making something known, but being cautious about it. And then lastly, secrets in dialogue are things that don't get spoken until they absolutely must be known. They can be in the internal dialogue of someone or character, so the reader knows this information and they're itching for it to come out. I can't wait until he finds out the baby is his. But they're only spoken until that pivotal peak moment, like they're back together. He sees something, thinks that the kid could be his, and it comes out. And then boom, everything blows up. All right, the next one, dialogue tags. Those are things like I say, he said, she said. So I'm going to say, as I do here, greater than. Use I say, said, that as a dialogue tag almost 99% of the time, okay? This is a controversial one, and I'm going to say that this is kind of a policy at Last Chapter Press because we want stories to move fast. So we would prefer that you use as few dialogue tags as possible. But if you use them, we prefer I say or he said versus she offered, he mentioned, they asked. So just keep it simple with the say instead. So that way readers, their brains don't have, their brains basically skip over the word say or said, depending on what tense you're in. And that keeps them reading faster and faster and without trip ups. But once you insert something else in there, the reader's brain has to take notice and it can make them stop and they have to question the author's choice sometimes. Like, is that really an asked question? Is she really offering this thing to the person? So don't make them question. Don't let them question. Why not just say. It doesn't need a special meaning, certainly. All right, the next one. Oh, dialects. Y'all better be careful. So I think that's only like the third time I've ever said y'all, so don't laugh at me. I am from the north, sorry. So I'm not opposed to clipping some ing words if you're trying to make somebody from, let's say, the South. So like, I'm just saying. But doing it over and over can both wear down the reader and it can be an editing nightmare. And in the end, it can end up with more issues and errors because the editor has to look for this. And sometimes they'll be like, well, it's just a lot. So they'll change one, but in the process, maybe they accidentally change something else. So I'm going to say, if you make it a characterization, then make the character's dialogue work in that dialect. Sprinkle more than coat and find words that won't be mistaken. All right, and that brings me kind of to drunk talk. And I'm going to say that I kind of like it. I like when words are slurred. I think it's a fantastic show. We know many publishers who frown on it, but there's nothing like a slurred, I love yous. So to set the scene. So now, overuse of alcohol is not funny. So please be responsible with your characters. The next one, silence doesn't kill, pausing for more than effect. So we love when a conversation gets very heated and then it comes to a screeching halt. Or one character just stares down the other. It's effective, it's dynamic, and it's delicious tension. And that's all the things that you want in a book or in a story. You can also use contractions, and I'm going to say these make a story go faster. They make it authentic. If you are not creating historical, contemporary romance is meant to be similar to real life, and we do not talk with full words. Did you see how irritating that was? But this sounds better. If you're not creating historical, contemporary romance is meant to be similar to real life, and we don't talk with full words. Do you see the don't talk, how it makes it feel like somebody is really just talking to you. It's casual, it's comfortable. The next one, avoid long periods of dialogue. Make sure you're sprinkling in that action. Did you know that some readers only read dialogue? I actually have a friend who only reads the dialogue, and she will come back to me and say, I think you need more dialogue. I think she could just have a book full of dialogue, honestly, but love her to death. But if you only provide dialogue and no setting, interactions, movement, the story will feel confusing and possibly even condescending because you're making the reader work for the story. Don't make them work for the story. That's not why they've bought the book. But if you give too much prose, which is too much of the other stuff, not dialogue, it'll feel like you're info dumping on them. It's a balance. Balance makes a good book. Some of this, some of that, and make the dialogue count. All right, so now let's look at how to create engaging dialogue. All right, first one, 100% know your character. Can you give your character a special way of talking? Do they have repetitions? Do they always use the word? I wouldn't use it every time they talk, but occasionally, like when they're nervous, possibly. Do they chew gum so it's hard to hear them? Do they pop their lips before speaking? I had a friend who did this, and although it was endearing, I probably would use it sparingly in characterization because it can be annoying to some people. So what is the purpose of the scene? And you know what? Go back to your solid scene worksheet from last week. If you haven't watched that episode, watch it. Remember what the objective of the scene is. Is it to introduce the characters? Is it to show their conflicts? Is it to make the reader know something that one of the characters won't, a secret? So work from there to create dialogue that works towards your purpose. All right, listen to those around you. I highly suggest doing this. Go to a coffee house, a restaurant, a mall, and listen in on people's conversations. I'm not saying spy on them, but when they're at the counter, do they go up confident when they order, when they're ordering? Are they aloof? They've done this 2 pumps vanilla, 1 pump caramel, kids temp, soy latte gig a million times. So it's like they roll it off and they don't care. Or are they shy and their eyes are saying they're scared, they're looking around? Make their dialogue match their appearance. Show through dialogue. Next one, dialogue tags. Remember to use them sparingly to create engaging dialogue. The more says and said than any other dialogue tag. Number 5, use body language to say more than words. These are also known as action tags instead of dialogue tags. So using these tags is a great alternative to the said or says tag. These show actions or gestures that attribute and convey the tone of emotions to the speaker. It makes the characters read more present and personified in the scene. They read as more than just talking heads going back in a room. So examples of action tags can be like playing with hair. Is that a nervous trait? Clicking their tongue while they're thinking. Looking around. Are they a curious sort? Motioning them off with a finger. Beckoning them with some fingers. Or flipping them off. That says angry, right? Absolutely. Just make it authentic to your character. If they would never flip off somebody, don't have them flipping off somebody. Although it can also be pretty funny when somebody has been just so sweet and prim and proper, and then all of a sudden they let the finger fly. So, I mean, what are you going for? Rom-com? There you go. Number 6, just create a draft. You can edit words, but you can't edit a blank page. And I think a lot of us understand this. It can seem daunting. And as a writer myself, who has just under 300 stories, novels, and novellas to my name, I still know it's hard to get those words down. I was struggling this weekend, but I still got my minimum in, what I needed to get in. Getting words on the paper is the only way to get to a story to the end. Write them, and then you can make them better. But you can't make a page with no words better. And with the planning that we're showing you, you'll be able to have building blocks. All right, let's see what we have next. Oh yes, sex. That's why you're really here, right? Okay, let's talk about sex, baby. So, why should you have sex scenes? I think that is a good question. Because you don't have to, period. Full stop. Not required. Sweet romance can be as engaging as one that has sex. It doesn't have to be a catalyst to cement a burgeoning relationship. Sex just doesn't. However, sex sells. It's a fact. Steamy books in general rank higher than sweet books, and they tend to stay sticky in rankings longer. So that means they stay higher ranked for longer. But if you're not into writing sex in your story, stop watching right now because this part's not going to be for you. However, if you want to write sex in your story, we're going to say that it can reveal character of one's true self. Is the hard-edged biker truly the most giving sexual partner? It can be a dichotomy of the normal of a character, badass to soft or sweet, or it can, reiterate what a character is like. So maybe in real life, they're very like forthcoming with information. Maybe they talk a lot during sex. So that could be a character's true self. Sex can also pause the plot line. And sometimes readers need a break. Plus, if you've built up the tension, they just want it to happen. Sex is usually outside of a conflict. It's a bonding moment for the characters. Although, if either is a virgin, it could be a conflict, honestly. But most likely, it would be an easily remedied fact by sex. The next one, intimacy and connection are created with sex. The act of sex is very personal. It's touching another person's body, and it's usually done with someone a person trusts. However, there are the examples of one-night stands. It's based in lust and purely for a physical release, hopefully. But not everyone can separate emotion from physicality, and that itself can cause conflict. So decide for each sex scene what the scene will create in intimacy and connection to deepen each character's experience. The next one, why we have sex scenes? We want to create awareness in the character. Often characters don't realize something about themselves until presented with evidence or someone points it out. Sex can be a great way to do this. If the hero is a get in, get off, get out kind of guy, but the heroine is strong and she makes him slow down, savor the moment, just feel. It's bound to be a very different experience for that get in, get off, get out guy. Okay. The next one, we want to arouse the reader. And yes, I mean this both in arouse their interest and physically. When a reader is engaged with a sex story, they may get activation of their sympathetic, parasympathetic, and somatic innervation systems, which results in a rush of oxytocin. What's that? That's the love hormone. So they get excited, they get happy, and they get energized. It's just human nature. And guess what? They'll want to come back for another hit. If you've written a really great sex scene, they're going to want more. Remember, it's been proven that rats who are able to give themselves orgasms will become addicted. And one even died due to sexual exhaustion. We like rats. We, like rats, enjoy the sensations and after effects of relaxation, tension release, and often the connections with or without a human. All right. Okay, now that I've made you uncomfortable, but I'm not because I like talking about sex, let's continue. So last week, we explored these 12 stages of intimacy, and I've used this quite a few times in other teachings because I think it's important. What you might not know is that studies have proven that couples who stay together the longest followed this similar progression of intimacy. They allowed time before advancing to the next stage. Now, sometimes in a short story, like the ones that I write as Bryn Hale, you don't have time to stop at every single one of them. But I do make an effort to make sure that they are in there in at least a small way. Why cheat your readers from experiencing this natural flow of bonding? All right, the how of sex scenes. So I'm not going to explain sex, so I'm just not. There are plenty of examples of romance novels out there to read that give great examples. However, what I'm going to do is give you some basics that I see as building a great sex scene. And the first one is start slow, build speed. Foreplay. It doesn't have to go on for scenes, but without it, you run the risk of the penetrating partner appearing selfish. Okay? And you want to ramp the action. Don't go from foreplay to rapid thrusting. It doesn't work that way. Allow for a build. Think like a volcano eruption. It begins with tremors, okay? Touching bodies, little scintillation. Then there's gas emissions with wait, that's disgusting, so we'll skip that part. Then there's steam and venting with a volcano. Think of this as talking and moaning. And then there's a lava dome buildup. This is penetration. This is tingles. This is getting close to that ultimate moment. Then the dome collapses in a volcano. And that's changing positions or slowing down. One partner asks for something else. They need something to get where they want to go. And then there's finally lava, ash, pyroclastic eruptions. Yes, this is the ultimate, penultimate orgasm. So, hey, don't leave a partner hanging too. If one of them did not have an orgasm, it may not happen in real life. I admit this totally. However, it almost always happens in romance, and it almost happens mutually one way or another. So don't leave them hanging. All right, the next one, 5 senses. We've talked about this one before too, haven't we? Hear, see, taste, touch, smell. So make it active and vibrant to the reader. The smell of her hair, the taste of peppermint on his tongue, the rough touch of his farmer's hands. It deepens a story and a scene like nothing else. All right, next thing, dirty talk with a question mark. So this is a choice, 100%. Higher steam, the more likely that you're going to include dirty talk. Lower steam, it may not be found, certainly. And I'm going to say a little goes a long way, certainly. You don't have to pepper in every, bad girl, sweet girl, girl, daddy's girl. It can be just one moment where you're a bad girl, aren't you? It does not have to be all of them. Expose your character figuratively and literally. So the moment that they get undressed in front of each other, it can be terrifying to most people and most characters. Use this time to get inside of their heads. Ew, don't get inside of them, but to explore your character's fears and self-doubts. And then next, we're going to build to the climax. Like I said, volcano, build, 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 and then explode. So think of a moment in every scene as the next one as sex and give it its due attention. So what I mean by this, it could be something like a dance. When they're slow dancing together, that can be super sensual. A touch, a brush of hands. And I'm going to use the example of Pride and Prejudice. So if you've ever watched the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice movie, there's a scene when Mr. Darcy holds her hand and helps her into a carriage. Afterwards, he makes an odd movement and fists his hand and kind of like stretches it out. Which would indicate to the person watching as a show that it's distress or discomfort. But the next time that he holds her hand, he's smooth and he almost lingers. It's a small but very potent change in his character, and it's so good. All right, moving on. Intimacy and connection. Again, make the scene as emotional as it is physical. Emotions like wonder, passion, hope, fulfillment, dreams, a pact, heartfelt, rush, and more. Cement the reader into the character and often present the sex scene from both POVs, point of views, so we can know what both partners are thinking. We as readers want to know, is he really engaging in this? Is this really something he wants to do? Same goes for the other partner, any partner. What are they thinking right now? The next one, changed characters after. So this one is just a little harder to explain, and I was trying to think of like how I can give this to you. And I'm going to say often the characters will come away different. But how different? This totally depends on your characters and your story and what you want from this scene. I I will forever play with my sex scenes, and if something does not feel genuine, I keep working that scene. I have someone else read it. I'm going to offer, email me. I'll read it. I'll let you know if it's working or not. But the character should actually have either an epiphany or some type of revelation after the sex scene. Okay, so we're up to the point where I want to give you some cautions, but please know that I want you to write the story the way you want to write the story, not the way that I tell you it should be written. You are the Indiana Jones of this adventure. All right, fix something there. Okay, so be careful with these things. These are only meant to be thinking points. Euphemisms. There's nothing wrong with just being anatomically correct, but it can also come off a little sterile or medical. Dick and cock are great for a guy. For a woman, softness or the P word are acceptable, and those won't like get you thrown into any platform's jail, but use that Z word and it just might. Make a choice, stick to it. Next thing, wham bam, no thank you, ma'am. Again, we need a progression of sex. Floor foreplay. Make it have the emotionality that bonds two people. Don't make it he's getting off, she's getting left. Unreasonable expectations. So, yes, I will admit romance novels often feature simultaneous orgasms and women who go from kissed to orgasms in 30 seconds of reading, but please be careful about creating too many unreasonable expectations. Many of your characters are imperfect. They should be imperfect. He doesn't have to be 10 inches and last for 45 minutes. He can be, but you can also have a solid 7 who gets in there in 1,000 well-developed, caring words, and the readers will have as much satisfaction for both the characters, and you'll have readers happier. All right. This one, dub-con and non-con is the next one on the. So Last Chapter Press has a firm no dub-con, no non-con in our books. Dub-con meaning dubious consent, which that dubious can mean tricked or deceived into sexual relations. And non-con means non-consensual. This is rape, plain and simple. I'm not here to judge. I'm not telling you what to or what not to write. I'm asking you to know why you're writing it. What is it doing for your story to have that in there? Sexual assault is not sexy. It has victims. and it does cause women and men major mental and physical health issues. If your story will be dubcon or non-con, it's best to have trigger warnings. Over half of the women and 1 in 3 men have experienced sexual violence. Think hard about re-engaging trauma. All right, all I'm going to say. Age and power imbalances in relationships. This is the last one that I'm going to caution you about. So this is something just to have caution on. As a writer, as one writer lost their Amazon privileges for a gymnast and a coach getting together. There have also been recent grooming stories where the girl was young, but there was no touching while she was underage. But there were references by the older man, and then when she was of age, he swooped in and made his move. It can be off-putting to readers, so know what your readers are looking for. If they're looking for that and that's what you want to write, by all means, but no, it's not going to be a hit with all readers. Nothing really is. All right, next thing. I want to tell you our rules. To be clear, these are our rules, and we reserve the right to decline any story. No pseudo-incest, infidelity, which means cheating, bestiality, rape, even as titillation, necrophilia, pedophilia, underage sex, or depraved acts, which means like masturbatory voyeurism. There's no cheating and no cliffhangers in our books. All right. The last thing, this is something that nobody thinks about, and you should. Well, maybe somebody thinks about it, but what I'm going to say is it's something that I see many authors glazing over. They have sex, they're done, the lights go out, and that's not how it has to be. And I also think that's not how it should be. We need to make it more exciting for the readers to keep them moving forward in the story, because often the sex scene can indicate a kind of finalization of a relationship. But if there's still conflict in the story, you'll want to remind them and keep them reading. So 6 possible ways to do this, although there are probably myriad of others. And I did use this before for the scenes. I'm using it again for the sex scenes. See what I did there? All right, confusion. Why did they just do this? What have they just done? Oh my gosh, who are you? I don't know if that'd be one. So number 2, consequences. Did the condom fail? Are there possible future children involved? Suspenseful action. Number 3, is there a knock at the door? Does their phone ring and there's an emergency that they have to attend to? Number 4, hint of what's to come. More conflict that ramp that conflict up. Number 5, tension of arrivals or departures. Somebody storms out. I can't believe you. Done, gone. And they're just sitting there. A return to earlier action. So next day, you're coming back to their plot line. This one's more of just a simple continuation, but I like to see the sex scene have some sort of resolution to it. How do the characters feel? All right. Thank you. And next time in session 4, we're going to be learning about creating ideas and plotting, because we want to have a good plot or good outline to our story, right? So I am changing up the schedule again just a little bit. I did have a conflict come up. So we are now going to be doing the next session on Monday, April 29th. I'm just going to check that. Just to make sure that's right, because sometimes you never know if I got it right. And again, 7 p.m. CST, Central Standard Time. There'll be a Zoom link in the next LCP newsletter, so be sure to subscribe. And don't forget, toes in the sand. We would love to have your story. All right, have a great evening. Take care. Bye.